Welcome inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Dan Hope joined by Garrick Hodge today for an episode of press coverage as Ohio State with some huge recruiting news on Monday morning as the Buckeyes land a commitment from the number one safety in the 2026 class, Blaine Bradford, a safety out of Louisiana, a guy who's been a very high top of the board priority target for the Buckeyes for a while, but this is a commitment that I don't think anyone was really expecting. I'm not even sure the coaches were expecting this to come on Monday morning. LSU had been viewed as the front runner, being a guy from Louisiana. Texas heavily in the mix as well, but Ohio State building strong relationships, particularly Matt Garrick and Tim Walton with Blaine Bradford, able to close the deal on Monday morning and land one of their biggest commitments so far in the 26 cycle.
Yeah, Dan, like you said, what a total surprise. I mean, I was taken aback. You were taken aback. I think half of the Woody Hayes Athletic Center was taken aback in the best way you can be taken aback, of course. But what a talent Blaine Bradford is. He's a guy that lines up traditionally at the safety positions, whether they be free or strong. But he also has the build that can, I don't want to compare him to Caleb Downs because that's an unfair comparison, but he has that playmaking ability of Caleb to where you can put him in the box. You can use him as a run defender. You can use him as a pass defender. You can do all sorts of things with his skill set that, frankly, there's just not a lot of players in the country built like he is that's able to do so many different things, especially with the multiple defense that Matt Patricia wants to run. And I know December's a long way away, so we always have to keep this in the back of our mind in the modern recruiting era that don't get too excited about a recruit until he actually signs. Well, it's not a national letter of intent anymore, but signs whatever he's going to sign that makes sure that he's in. But for today and today only, you can't help but dream big on this guy and what he could bring to Ohio State in future seasons.
Like you said, it's unfair to compare anyone to Caleb Downs right now, but also Caleb Downs is probably one reason why Blaine Bradford is committed to Ohio State right now.
True.
Because he saw what Caleb Downs did last year, he saw what Lathan Ransom did last year, and that gives guys reason to want to come to Ohio State, to want to play safety at Ohio State. And I think Matt Garrick, you add this commitment into what he did last year, getting Fahim Delane to lead the 2025 class at safety. You'd have to say he's doing a really good job so far with what he's doing, building out his first couple of safety classes on the recruiting trail. And I think in tandem with Tim Walton, Ohio State defensive back recruiting's at a really high level right now.
Yeah, and I mean, for all we know, maybe the momentum doesn't stop here. They're in a great relation. They have great relationships with Braylon Womack, five-star safety out of Mississippi. They have great relationships with Simeon Caldwell, who also happens to be Tim Walton's nephew. Not saying they're going to get either of those players, or both of them, certainly not. And maybe things change now that there's already a safety committed. But if you could pair one of those safeties alongside Blaine, I mean, you're looking at a hell of a safety tandem, Dan.
And just in general right now, I think Ohio State's got a lot of momentum on the recruiting trail. We've certainly seen that on the offensive line side as Tyler Bowen has already landed 3 commitments from Maxwell Riley, Sam Greer, and Tucker Smith. You wrote an article before spring started about the top priorities for Ohio State this spring, and 2 of those priorities were build momentum off of winning the national championship and start building out that offensive line class. And so far, those 2 boxes have been checked.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think you can build off momentum any more than landing a 5-star safety that, in our Slack channel, one of our, I guess the way to phrase it is someone that's very high at 11 Warriors. I can't remember ever getting a 5-star talent out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana to come to Ohio State. Like 10 years ago, that would almost be a pipe dream. But now, the plus side of the modern era is that if there's a talented player anywhere in the country and you just win a national championship, why not go after him? Because, I mean, they're capitalizing off a national championship. You look at the banners around here, maybe you can't quite see it in the shot, but there's a national championship banner right there. And to all the recruits that are just walking in, I mean, that's probably the first thing they see alongside the other 3 national championship banners they have up there. And it just feels like it's a lot easier to sell Ohio State than it was at this time a year ago because the proof is in the pudding at this point. They've shown that they can done it. They've shown that they can win big games, and it gets a lot of kids excited about potentially playing for them.
And, the narrative that I'm sure teams were trying to use against them a few months ago of, Ryan Day might get fired, that narrative's completely off the table. He signed a long-term contract extension. There's great stability inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center right now. So all of that helps. I believe, is it 8 commitments now for Ohio State in the 2026 class? 2 5-stars. Wide receiver Chris Henry Jr. being the other one. Another guy kind of like Bradford where it's like they're going to be holding their breath till December, kind of like it was with Jeremiah Smith a couple years ago where it's like He keeps saying he's committed to Ohio State, yet he keeps flirting with other schools. So that's just how recruiting is in 2026. But I think you sit right now after this Bradford commitment. I think a month ago we probably would have both said, they're off to a little bit of a slow start in this class. They had only had a few commitments. Yep. Now you're starting to see the ball rolling here as Ohio State goes through spring practice. 2 more weeks of spring practice to go. A lot more big visits to come. Who are some of the other guys on your radar right now that you're watching for, whether it be guys who could be on commitment watch or just guys who have big visits coming up that Ohio State has a chance to impress?
Well, Womack's, I think he's scheduled to visit this week. It's either this week or next. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think that would be a pretty good one to capitalize on the momentum. Like, hey, Bradford's in. You want to play alongside great players? Come on in. There's a couple other, I think the spring showcase, or I guess we can call it a spring game now, is going to have a loaded recruiting prospect list, and we'll have all the coverage there. But the one that tops my mind right now is Braylon Womack, and I would just be putting a full court press on him because I know he is very interested in Ohio State, and Ohio State is obviously very interested in him. And if you can get 2 5-star safeties in one class, again, easier said than done. But it also gives you a little bit of insulation from if LSU goes to Daddy Warbucks in December and finds that, or another school, whatever that may be. But either way, I think that would be where my attention lies right now.
If you could pull a pair of 5-star safeties out of Louisiana and Mississippi, that would go back to what you were talking about. But that's not something you typically see at Ohio State, getting 2 5-stars at the same position out of the Deep South. So that would certainly be a coup for Ohio State if they can pull it off. We'll see how this all progresses as the 2026 cycle continues. Lots more coverage of both Ohio State football recruiting and spring football to come on 11warriors.com. For now, for Garrick Hodge, I'm Dan Hope. This has been another episode of Press Coverage. Thanks for joining us.